Welcome back. Good morning. My name is Victor Lo. Thank you so much, Mariambo. And even now, you as our viewer for staying with us. Now it's time for Eye on Politics. And today, before we take a look at what you have on the front page of our local dailies, how about we take a look at our traffic. It has been an eventful week. When you see this, it shows Pembe, that is Mombasa. So today, let me start with the traffic situation in Mombasa. Mombasa, good morning. Let me start with that particular region. Today, it looks a bit busy, so to speak. And Mombasa people, good morning once again, all the way from Nyali Road, coming from Malindi down to Hola Park, past Bamburi, coming down to Kengeleni, and finally at the Kongowe Market. Today, looking very, very busy, meaning that what Mombasa are already up and going about their business. That is why this place around this Nyali Road, coming up to Kengeleni here at the Kongowe Market is busy. There you go. Past Kengeleni, coming to the Nyali Bridge, New Nyali Bridge is also bumper to bumper. It's a complete departure from what was being witnessed last week. Today is very busy, coming down to the CBD. Now, that is also the situation around the Likoni ferry, just inbound as you come from the other side of the ferry and joining the Mombasa island, this other side. It's busy here at the crossing channel. Now, that is where it starts from. And you see it's busy because of the traffic, people coming all the way from this other side and coming to work into town. That is why this side of the bridge is busy. How about Watu Mombasa coming from that side of Changamwe all the way from Miritini? It's okay. Watu Mombasa, it's your time to drive to work at this particular hour past the Makupa Coast Bridge, which was a very notorious part of that stretch sometimes back. But since that bridge was made and opened, it has eased the flow of traffic in that region. That's as far as Mombasa is concerned. What does the traffic in Nairobi look like? Very good. Good morning, my fellow countrymen in Nairobi. Okay, today let me start with the Thika Road. It's again a complete departure from what was being witnessed last week and all the way from KCA University. Now, this is Thika Road. Today is very busy. Kenyans are back to work. That is KCA University, busy past Survey, Kenya Utalii Hotel, down to Muthaiga Square, the interchange joining the Kiambu Road from the DCI headquarters past Muthaiga Golf Club, joining the Muthaiga Square there. That stretch is bumper to bumper. For those people using Thika Road, this is the situation at this particular hour. Past that slightly, coming towards Pangani Shopping Center, it's moving vizuri, but it's starting to again, as you come to Muranga Road and then finally joining Ngara into the Globe Roundabout, finally into the CBD. Now, this is how it looks like. Now, CBD, as at right now, it's a few minutes past 7. Actually, it's 10 minutes past, 12 minutes past 7. And this is a situation like in the CBD. Everywhere is red. River Road, red. When you come to Accra, people are busy. Look at around Imenti House. That along Moi Avenue and Tomboya is also busy at this particular hour, meaning Kenyans are back to work. Around GPO, that is around Kenyatta Avenue. From the GPO roundabout, past Huduma Center, that is Kenyatta Avenue, coming down to Kimathi Street is also busy. That is as far as this is concerned. But the major highway is looking pretty okay. That is the Uhuru Highway. The only problem is around the Anniversary Towers because of the roundabout there. But so far, so good. All those people coming from that side of Westlands, that is ABC Place, joining the Westlands roundabout. It's okay. So you can still have a drive if you're in the house. This is your time now to leave the house. You see the way it's moving? Coming down past Villa Rosa Kempinski, up to that National Museum interchange, coming down past Uhuru Highway. By the way, we are around here. This is where we are, KBC. This is where we are. And finally into the CBD, Ikusawa. Finally, if you are using Ngong Road, So this is how what's the traffic situation looking like. Iko sawa. Today in Ngong Road, Iko fine. Ngong Road coming just around Nakumatt Junction, the Junction Mall is fine. Moving full, okay. Oledume, Adam Sake down there, and ultimately joining Ngong Road too. But the problem is around Daystar University, that is around DOD, where the problem is. Coming to join DOD, that is Total, and then Valley Road ultimately into the CBD. Very, very okay. And finally, very quickly, what about Kisumu? Kisumu looking okay as far as that's concerned. One word, okay. If you're coming all the way from Kondele down to Kisumu town into the CBD, so far so good. So if you're in Kisumu, you don't have any problem as far as traffic is concerned. That is the traffic situation in the country at this particular hour. Okay, I'll get back to our other headlines making across the country, but how about now? Let me take you through the front page of our local dailies here. Just tell you that I'm still expecting my guest, but already I have got Daniel Orogo in studio, political analyst and a governance commentator here in studio. Daniel, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Very well. You had a great weekend, I bet.
Of course, there's been so much happening over the weekend. I think some of them are outlined in the headlines.
Yes.
Sports knockouts, you know, suspension of licenses.
Yeah, when you did the unthinkable.
It could have been an eventful weekend.
Yeah.
You know, that have been narrated down on the headlines as well. For the first time again, we have Wanyonyi knocking out Mandonga. You know,
yeah, in their,
I don't know, that probably could be third round of rematch or second.
Yes.
To tell us not to lose hope in our, you know, there have been a lot of miscalculations and losses from Wanyonyi.
Yes.
So I think that is also a bit of encouragement.
Omanyala did the unthinkable.
Yes, Faith Kipyegon again has shined again in the Diamond League. So I think as a country also, even as we celebrate so much that is going on in our, you know, political cycles, then there is matters much to really appreciate our patriotism on.
Absolutely.
As a Gor Mahia fan, I think it's important to restore the licensing issues also that we saw, that CAF suspended Gor Mahia. So we expect that the Football Federation of Kenya would help, because it's the only team that is representing Kenya, and I think it's one and also the other team. But it's the first team that is representing Kenya in the Continental Confederations Cup. So hopefully that the sport minister, Honorable Bob Namamba, do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick Mwenda had a meeting with CS Lidowalo, and of course it's a big challenge for Gor Mahia that we hope is going to be resolved as soon as possible. All right. Very well. So let's take a look at what we have on the front page of our local dailies. Let me start with the Standard newspaper here. On the front page of the Standard newspaper, hustlers caught between a rock and a hard place. Hustlers caught between a rock and a hard place. Ordinary Kenyans are worst affected by the high cost of living, a failing economy and political turbulence. However, they also pay the heaviest price of protesting as they fall victims to police brutality and their daily sources of income becoming disrupted. That is on the front page of the Standard newspaper. 60,000 teachers refuse to teach junior secondary school. 60,000 teachers refuse to teach junior secondary. This is the story here on page 4. I think it's important to note that 60,000 tutors declined transfer to teach in junior secondary school. And according to the data here, some 68,671 teachers qualify to teach in junior secondary school, but only 8,367 have so far moved. According to TSC, tutors have declined the new roles as they come with the title little to no benefits. That is, according to TSC, tutors have declined the new roles as they come with little to no benefits. That is on the Standard. Okay, how about we go back to the front page of the Standard newspaper. Kenya credit rating takes a blow after Fitch review. Kenya credit rating takes a blow after Fitch review. Prospects of assessing cheap loans were dimmed after the credit rating was revised negative. Not a good way for the country. And fresh dollar crisis looms on fuel bill. That is fresh dollar crisis looms on fuel bill. That is again on the front page of the Standard. And of course we have got some of the hustlers' views here on the front page of the Standard. Hustlers caught between a rock and a hard place. What do you make of this headline, Daniel?
I think it's a realization between post politics and coming to reality about the delivery of the government of the day. It is expected, it always happens in any political cycle, that after the election, viewers now must begin, or voters must now begin to come into terms with the government's delivery agenda. One, like you've mentioned, we have a country where the citizens, or rather the hustlers that you've mentioned, overwhelmingly voted the government in the understanding that the government would provide for their basic necessities, provide opportunities for job employment, different opportunities, especially for those who are in the lower cadre who voted this government. There is also turning between now demanding for government to deliver versus protecting, and supporting the government of the day. That you find out that it's no longer, things are no longer really working as you expected, and hopes are diminishing in the background again of tough economic crisis as a country, in the background of citizens trying to express their rights of expression as well, freedom to protest and demonstrate. We are at a place where the hustlers or any citizens of this republic would really want to petition the government for the government of the day to come forth with their promises. But again, on the other side, they are asking if we go so far and do so much to the level that we even destroy our own country, to the level that even it becomes a threat to our own economical income, then I think that is also a thin line of practices of rights versus also not overstepping the mandate of those who are expressing their right as well. All right,
very well. Wakili Gibson Gisore, also in studio, advocate of the High Court. Wakili, good morning and welcome to the program. Hustlers caught between a rock and a hard place. That is just a quick preview of what we have on the Standard, front page of the Standard. I don't know what you make of that headline.
That's a very clear description of what situation we are in. It's not only hustlers, it's pretty much everyone. Even those people who are rich enough and they loan the government, they are now towing between their money getting lost or taking longer to be paid, because those are some of their decisions the government has to make. So even the investors have, since you've seen, I don't know whether you saw Suluhu try to comment that the problem with our neighbor is become our reaping day, because we have had the largest number of investors come into their country within a short span when we have had the Mandamano. So those are some of the things which should be able to tell you that you're not sitting at a good place, and it's bound to pinch, and it's bound to pinch more in the pockets of Kenyans. I was telling somebody over the weekend that from now onwards we should expect to feel the weight of government in our pockets, and that's going to happen. And it's very sad for the young people who are the hustlers especially, because now it's going to take longer for somebody to stabilize, especially in the city. Nairobi has been one of the hardest places on earth to start a life. It's going to be more painful. And then it's even going to be very difficult to take your kids to school. It's going to be very difficult to even commute around. You remember Nairobi also depends on the very old system of matatu instead of having a train system which can be able to ferry people easily at low costs. So you either driving a vehicle or you are in a matatu, which is very inefficient. And of course, either way, you are using expensive means.
All right. Okay. Very good. Okay. We'll get more to discussion that, because that is going to be performing part of our discussion this particular morning. On the front page of this Daily Nation, State on Trial. That is on the front page of the Daily Nation, State on Trial. And on the front page there you see One person who I know many are now, that is Pastor Paul Mackenzie. We all know him, at least at this particular point. And why is the state on trial? That is a glance. Security agencies, judicial system blamed for Shakahola deaths. That is number one. Number two, victims' families in agony as a result of DNA test delayed and so forth. So far, that is the situation. In submissions made to Senate and ad hoc committee, Kenyans are pointing an accusing finger at the government, police, National Intelligence Service, and the Interior Ministry, as well as political leaders for sleeping on the job regarding the deadly activities of Pastor Paul Mackenzie's controversial church. Now, and as the wheels of justice slowly turn and the country slowly recovers from the Shakahola tragedy, it is necessary to address existing gaps in the law that have allowed religious extremism to flourish. That is why the front page of the Daily Nation is a complete departure from what we have state on trial. Pressure mounts on Ruto Raila to hold talks. That has been coming from the religious leaders and even the civil society organizations, and the international community as well have been piling more pressure on President William Ruto and of course opposition leader Raila Odinga to dialogue and end killings. Gentlemen, it was not something that people expected last week, as we also faced wave of arrest and abductions, which also raised concern. Let me start with you, Daniel.
Yes, I mean, you said there's a headline by the Nation on a state on trial. Normally, there's always a catchphrase on whether we have a democracy on trial or not.
Yes.
These have been reverberated differently always after the election, when the headlines of political parties or political party leaders saying that now democracy is on trial. Now, there's, like you've alluded to, Victor, a number of issues that marked the weekend, as opposed to what we've just said, is that we've seen different flashes in the headlines of different newspapers. One, like you say, the assumption or the accusation of state abduction, that a number of protesters, those who were arrested, members of parliament, members of the Senate, civil society, other people who are protesting, who are arrested and have not been produced in court. We don't know their whereabouts, and I am tempted to think that it is forthcoming that the government should actually even protect the welfare of those who are arrested and those who are whereabouts have been known. The government of the day is fully responsible for their safety and their welfare. That is what is ideally in any other democracies, that even other people have different views in the process of arrest. Their welfare has to be, their rights has to be granted, as they go through the trial. So the other headlines are, of course, the government of the day really needs to be responsible about and provide an explanation, is also what I've seen going through the social media. And of course, the ministry have tried as much as possible. The Minister of Interior have tried as possible to explain and to call for those who can, produce the evidence forward about the issue that happened in Nyalenda over the weekend, and different parts of Kisumu, as alleged by the Azimio coalition.
Yes.
So I think those are the headlines that we've seen that has marked throughout the weekend, that have coming from different quarters. Different quarters. Azimio, the government bit of it. As citizens, we are left at the mercy of just trying to get to understand exactly what's going on in the country.
Okili, in 1 minute probably, state on trial, the issue of Pastor Paul Mackenzie, nobody saw this, but as we speak, the death toll in Shakahola has gone past the 400 mark. This shows just how serious this case, and probably it might even go up. I fear so.
The way it's going, we might go past 5, past even 600. I don't know the kind of.
But why is the state on trial on this case?
It's you see, our constitution, or our nationhood is based on the state providing security and be able to guard each and every soul within its boundaries. That is what is the establishment of a nationhood. If a current government cannot be able to provide security even for a single soul, or cannot be able to account for that, then it means that it has totally failed, and that is why I think the title comes that the state is on trial, because it was caught slept on the job. It was caught sleeping on the job. Yeah. And now we've lost over 500. Not only, even I think there's no single terrorism act which has gone with such number of people within the soils of Kenya. With that, this is planned and all that. But the fact that religion, something which people should be running to for comfort, ended up killing such number of people, and the government was not aware or didn't do so much to help that, that should be able to shock every Kenyan, and the government needs to be indicted in these particular incidents. I don't think there is much they're feeling, because I think Kenyans forget so quickly. We have since moved on, and we're even not following the count. Okay. So that is one of the thing. The second bit, I think, which as a lawyer I need to highlight, is that for the longest we have not been able to see a certain kind of cases which are known as habeas corpus. The habeas corpus cases are whereby people disappear, and that speaks to what I've said earlier, that you need to have the state provide information on the whereabouts of everyone, and the security and the state of or condition of everyone. Okay. But we have some cases now of habeas corpus coming to the courts, government not being able to explain, or being asked by the court ordered to produce a person dead or alive. That is what the habeas corpus is, as part of evidence, because it's the only institution or entity which can be able to do that. Okay. So that before Orogo comes in, that was seen earlier in the ages when we were a single party state, and the latter stages of Moi era. That is when those cases were more. Now, under the constitution, the new constitution, we need not to have that.
Let's take a break before Orogo jumps in. I know that was the next thing. Let's take a break. I've not taken through the front page of the Star newspaper, and of course BBC and France 24. Let me just take a break. When we come back, Daniel Orogo and Wakili Gibson Gisore. So much to talk about after this. Stay with us. All right, welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Iron Politics is on now. All right, finally on the front page of the Star newspaper, why Ruto, Raila and Uhuru wore a risky game. Why Ruto, Raila and Uhuru wore a risky game. Kenyatta tells president to face him as simmering row spills into public domain. Now, experts warn that feud could sink country into anarchy. That is on the front page of the Star newspaper. Why Ruto, Raila and Uhuru wore a risky gamble. Now, some sweet victory there for Omwami Wanyonyi. Omwami made a rematch with Mandonga, and of course, it was a sweet revenge. And of course, he said, Mandonga said, Mtukazi said that he was beaten fair and square, and he had accepted. Now, that is sportsmanship. Why Ruto, Raila and Uhuru wore a risky game? Then before I get into this, you wanted to say something before I move to the front page. Kindly, in one minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you see, it's quite easy sometimes to apportion blame to the state, to the apparatus, to the institutions, because they fear that there is no sense of individual responsibility. Even as much as there is an investigation in exactly what happened in Shakahola, I believe that within a village and a community setup, there are even structures that are there, Victor, right? And I was just giving an example, even offset. I was saying that in my village, in Oloo Songa, when one person disappears, then it becomes 2, it becomes 3. People cannot sleep in that village. You understand? By the fact that a certain number of people are mentioned to have died and have been buried mysteriously. You know, even in the night, people will not sleep. Yeah. People would go into a frenzy finding out what happened, where are they, and who probably, because the fear is it can be you next time in the line. So we are counting 1, 2, 3 until over 400 or 300 buried silently, nobody knows, in some shamba somewhere, people doesn't know, and until a whistleblower comes in and say there's something going on, and then the state gets into it.
And this happened over time.
And this happens over time. So that is what I'm really asking. And some of these people were from, Western Kenya, different parts of Kenya, Ukambani, going to that place. In what Wakili has just said, in the worship, trying to understand, get an answer of the day of what is affecting on their lives, and they don't come back. So I think there is something that really ailed the public view, that I think the state and government really needs to get to the deep of the conversation. I think there is the Senate Select committee that is hearing on this. But I think this report should be published, and Kenyans should actually know if really we are into a state of a religion that uses the holy books to hoodwink the vulnerable of the population, taking advantage and sinking them on their deathbeds. And I think
I'm
this
just
is
trying to imagine how difficult
as a
this case
country.
would be, because when you want to have Wakili, a charge up to 400, 500 on the head of Mackenzie, or in this case on the head of the government. So the government must answer to every particular soul.
Yes.
As per the autopsy, that is like 400 or 500 charges against the government or against Mackenzie, whichever the case may be.
I would want to look at it differently. The state is on trial for having slept on the job, and we have lost souls, but the state is not the one which is answering to the charges. It's because Mackenzie has now since been produced in court. So it's actually them to produce, who are supposed to produce evidence to ensure that Mackenzie goes in. But even if Mackenzie is hanged to death, do we get the 500 people back? That's where the state is on trial, that they shouldn't have let this happen. It shouldn't have gone this far. This is religious extremism, which can be related. I don't know, in our law we should be able to look at even dealing it as a terrorist, an act of terrorism, because I don't have any other words to describe it any better. The state needs to be able to be responsible. And when this thing came out, we saw quite a number of people come out and say, we did something. We did report it. People moved from Western, there's a man who went to even rescue his kids, and he found that one had died, and he was able to rescue 2 or 3.
Yeah.
He even had Mackenzie arrested in Nairobi, and he was released while the guy has not even left the police station. So that speaks to how the state was dealing with this matter. It could not be able to look beyond the public eye. I mean, as long as Mackenzie is out of the public eye, or as long as Mackenzie has taken plea and gone back to his, they could not look anything beyond that.
Okay.
And this is what has killed all these people, and that's why I think the headline there clearly speaks to the state
Why
of
the
the
state
issues.
is on trial. Okay, gentlemen, the front page of the Star newspaper, why Ruto, Raila and Uhuru war a risky gamble. That's what we are going to be discussing, so let me save that. How about we cross over and take a look at what you have on the front page of the BBC. That is the front page of the BBC. Spain's conservatives fall short of all-out victory. Popular Party leader Albert Núñez Feijóo now narrowly wins, but is held back by left-wing parties. That is what's happening in the Europe on the front page of the BBC. Finally, on the front page of France 24, Spain, both parties failed to reach absolute majority needed to form a government. This is what's on the front page of France 24. Both parties failed to reach absolute majority needed to form a government. Spain appears headed for political gridlock after Sunday's inconclusive national elections left parties on both the right and left without a clear path toward forging a new government. That is what has been updated 5 minutes ago. So it's also happening across our borders, as you can see. And of course, people are on the streets celebrating from both sides. The Conservative Popular Party won the elections, but it fell short of the hopes of scoring a big and much bigger victory and forcing the removal of Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Instead, the party, led by candidate Alberto Núñez Feijóo, now performed below the expectation of most campaign polls. Now, that is as far as that's concerned. What are the figures? Now, according to the figures here, the bloc that could likely support Sanchez totaled 172 seats, the right bloc behind Feijó 172. So the issue here is only a difference of 2 seats. That is on the front page of France 24 and the BBC. Very well. Back home to our discussion. So, Daniel, we witnessed what really happened over the week. I want to give you a minute and a half to give me a quick update on, just a quick recap on what happened between Wednesday, Thursday, through Friday, and over to the weekend.
I mean, it's so obvious that we had protest. I was indicating, Victor, that I am very skeptical when this is termed as anti-government protest, always. But I think I disagree with that kind of a headline, because the moment it's put as anti-government, probably it leaves out the responsibility of the citizens to this cause, because everyone will see that everyone is just against the government. No, that is not the case. The case is that people are just petitioning, people are just demonstrating their frustration in a constitutional order. And that is why the government, to some extent, had allowed and had given a free room for demonstration and picketing to take place, to express. So there's been those 3 days of mandamano. And the heightened bit of it was on Wednesday, Thursday a little bit of it. Friday I didn't see a lot of headlines about the demonstration, but I saw that on Friday there was concentration on the police trying to contain demonstrators, especially on the slum areas of the city, and also the other expanses of Kisumu and other areas. But I think there's also something probably interesting that we should always, because I always want to give a fair assessment of it, the clear calls for dialogue. I think this is one thing that let us not leave out, that even as this goes on, there is sections of Azimio allied political leaders and Kenya Kwanza allied political leaders that have seen the importance of a dialogue to have a political stalemate resolved. Yeah. You have seen the Catholic Conference of Catholic Bishops issuing a press statement, requesting that if anyone is not there to lead this kind of efforts, that they are willing to do so. But even besides that, there is also another mention of the Finance Act, the request that if that is the issue that has brought out all this trick that has been happening for the 3 days, because the protest for 3 days, it is because of alleged 3 points of asks. You understand? And 3 points of asks have been given a solution. One is to solve the stalemate, is a political conversation to solve a political crisis. I know Wakili probably sees from a legal angle. In other platforms, I keep on saying we have a political problem that requires a political solution. Even if we have a political solution, then other legal issues, other economic issues will be sorted definitely. The issues about high cost of living, again, there have been a request to try to amend the Finance Act so that the demands by the other side would be actually be met. And of course, the IBC issue that is now becoming a thorny issue again. So I think those marked the 3 days that I saw.
Yes.
The ambassadors probably were there to try also to talk to the international community to try to have this political solution. So I am hopeful. I am a very optimistic person today that we are going to have a solution.
We are going to have a solution.
We are going to have a solution very soon about this issue.
Okay, even as you give me a recap of what happened, I would like you to give me a clear distinction between, the right to picket and where to stop, because a majority of Kenyans and even the opposition leaders said that their supporters should come out as per Article 37. But there's a very thin line. Where do we draw it?
the line is drawn clearly where your political civility starts and ends. Because as Orogo, if I can pick up from where Orogo has left, that we need, I'm not going to lie to Kenyans that we don't have our political problems. That is the biggest problem we have in this country. Once we be able to sort that, then everything else is going to be able to fall into place. As Kwame Nkrumah said, that seek the political kingdom first and the rest will be added. That is indeed very true from 50 or 60 years back when that statement was made. In Kenya, we've gone ahead and we've thought that, fixing Kenya is through a constitutional structure, which we have a very beautiful structure, by the way, which even people around the world come and say this is quite advanced. But then that does not remove the aspect that our politics is a very bad one, which has never been reformed. Once we be able to reform our politics and be able to play fair, then we can be able to have a situation in which we can be able to have political sanity. Once we have political sanity, we'll have the respect of the rule of law, and then we'll also have to look at the principles and the doctrines of the Constitution, which should be able to inspire confidence across the country. Because if you can remember the judgment which Maraga gave in 2017, it was very potent, because he was speaking that if we do not speak to the principles of the law, then we are going to be lost. And I think that was a warning. And we are seeing this happen. Because if we don't fix our political situation by obeying the political determinations or because even the Constitution speaks to the aspirations of the people, if we do not gather that spirit and be able to merge it with the spirit of the Constitution, then we get to lose our soul, our nationhood. That should be the basic structure. You remember we were giving examples last Monday, whereby we said, as a nation, what is our philosophy? What is our political motto? Because even as school, it has to have a motto which they should be able to aspire to. But what is our political aspiration as a nation, other than having one of our own in the house in the hill? If we can be able to demystify such a big question as Kenyans, then we can be able to start finding our political journey. As long as we're not clear on that, then we will of course be having what we are having. We might even change our law to look like something else. But I mean, it will be the same thing over and over. We need to first understand ourselves. Who are we? Then once we have defined ourselves as a certain particular animal, then we can be able to start living like that animal.
I mean, it's a very delicate situation, because as we speak, even the president said that it's not even the protesters who are out on the streets. It's now some kind of a formed gang now terrorizing, and that is why the police were out to contain them. But, picketing will continue, protest will continue. Azimia have also called for another one this particular Wednesday. I'm trying to look at the cycle. At what point will Kenyans start realizing that, yes, Article 37 is quite open for them to exercise, to walk around with? They can quote from the first point on Article 37 at the last one. But then, have we gotten that point right, Daniel? Have we gotten that point right as Kenyans? Across the world, as I was watching at the international news channels, there are protests across the world. In other jurisdictions, it's happening, but it's quite different from what we are seeing here in the country. Have we not woken up after 2010 Constitution?
Well, Victor, let me just correct that recently in France, there was a very serious protest.
Or even in West Africa, where opposition leader was freed from detention.
Yes, probably Osman Sonko from Senegal. But in France, Victor, there was a protest that there was burning of properties on the streets, of Paris. It was a serious one, and you see, when I watched that and also try to relate with what we have, I am tempted to think that human beings are human beings. That we still struggle with the rights of freedom, where it begins and it ends. And even mature democracies like France are equally still struggling to understand where does peaceful protest and an armed process ends. Because there were issues about migrants and issues about what was happening in France, that now the demonstration, the anti-government demonstration in Paris degenerated to the natives versus the migrants who are coming in. And you see, it was deadly, which made me also understand that, you know, like I said, it is not only us struggling with these limits. Talking about where does the freedom ends, Victor, we were here when we saw the insurrections in Pentagon, where Donald Trump mobilized the masses and went and attacked Pentagon when there was a ratification of Joe Biden's, when the House was confirming the votes, and the whole House went into attack by the civilians and protesters. Different people and different authors have actually tried to understand that, do we reach at a level where we need to redefine democracy? Because the democracy as it is probably is not in tandem with the contextual issues of the world.
Yeah.
There is a rising, a population that is aware of their rights. A litigating country like ours that we have, where people are going to courts and they're halting the government processes. They understand the Constitution, and the courts are finding in their interpretation, the courts are finding their rights in their petition. And like you've mentioned, like the ones that we had for 3 days, there was an issue about demos, and it's not only Article 37. Article 24, there are limits of expression of those rights. And there is a temptation that even as you exercise your rights to picket and demonstrate, make sure that it doesn't affect my right as a person who is not going for that demonstration, right? That is very clear, is in Article 24. But do our people know that? Do our really people know that in an environment where protesters, for example, allegedly paid, in an environment where protesters are now facing off with the police who are throwing tear gas canisters, and police who are human beings actually also protecting themselves, it's quite difficult at that time to try to determine the rights, of people in their limits of protest and their demonstration contextually. You ask about the other issue. We are into this phase, and I'm always very candid when I talk about this issue and provide solutions to it as well. The issue of the winner takes it all. Victor, I keep on hammering these issues and each and every this platform. The problem we're having, Wakili Gisore, the problem we're having in this country is that the framers of the Constitution gave us a Constitution that is presidential. That still, even as we try to have a chapter in devolution, where the state resources are taken back to the 47 county governments, we still have a problem of ethnicity where we see when our person is on top there, we probably be benefiting, right? And so we have reports. NCIC has given us reports. The reports that have been looked at the Public Service Commission. Victor, it is not our word. It is in the public record. And we saw it on the papers where there's been a semblance that when a particular person from other ethnic communities ascend into position, there is a temptation that there is people of this similar tribalism that occupy those positions. Those reports are documented, they are there. And true to it is that by default, everyone is tempted to get their people into these positions, right? It is human, but we have a constitution. So this is why you see there's a concentration and attention in the positions of the president. I wish that even as the constitution is giving us 10 years, we can review and amend the constitution, right, Wakili? We are beyond, because now we are beyond 10 years. It is time for us to sit down and amend this constitution and address these thorny issues that are always making people to go in the streets after each and every election to protest about the outcome of election because their person is not there, to protest about the outcome of election because they think IBC is not transparent and fair.
Are we still learning?
So I think these are issues that we really need to look at.
2020 Constitution is here with us, years on end. Now, are we still in the learning process, Wakili?
That's an interesting question, Victor. I will say that everyone is, I think, as Orogo has tried to put it expansively from across the spectrum. We have seen in the US, we've seen the same thing happen in France, and are the very first countries to start practicing democracy. So if they are experiencing the same challenges we are experiencing, we should be thankful and say that we are at par with them now.
You say that,
politically, not economically.
I'm telling you, they can say,
not economically, because some of these things you cannot try them in other countries, you know. So we are an evolving democracy. We need to catch up. But as a lawyer, where do I stand? We dropped the ball at the point of having the new constitution. The consecutive government, you know, much as we are talking of 10 years, we were having a very good chance of trying to be able to spread the gospel of constitutionalism, which has never been practiced in this country. Because we had a new constitution, we left the other, changed a shirt. But you know, when you change a shirt, you don't change from who you are. That is the kind of challenge we're having. Why am I saying this? And this is what I was speaking last week before I was cut short. As a nation, we needed to understand that once we have a new constitution, we needed clear guideline on civic education, so that this civic education goes to the grassroots, goes to the ground. People assume that once Orogo, the civic society and the lawyers speak the law and the politicians interpret it in a piecemeal to serve their interest,
then that is final.
That is not the case. The constitution is for the people. We need to go to the grassroots.
So the question is, do Kenyans at this particular point, today is 24th of July, do we really understand our position as Kenyans? Even as we still go through the process of Mandamano, the government is still adamant there's nothing like talks. The president said that it's ready for talks, but there are some conditions to it. But the biggest person here is the voter. Does the voter have that pure knowledge of what's going around him or her?
That is the challenge. That's what I was speaking to, that we do not, because once we be able to cultivate the spirit of constitutionalism, and is actually even taught in school, should be taught in school, what are the provisions, what are the principles of the constitution, what are some of, we used to have something called GHC at some point, where we used to learn some civic and political, that is the right way of instilling the new constitution into the mentality of Kenyans, because these are the people who are going to live through this constitution. If they do not understand it, they are being interpreted, this constitution, by politicians who want a specific agenda, because they can only tell you one side of it, which favors them. They won't tell you the other side. And then when things get rough, you find yourself in court, you're wondering, why am I in court and I was doing a civic duty? You don't know that you've actually violated a part of it. So that is what we need to do. And the politicians are taking advantage of this. As long as we are not going to interpret our constitution to Swahili, as long as we are not going to interpret our constitution to the local native languages, because this is practiced in Tanzania. Tanzania, anything law, anything which government policies, even an act, the local media stations have the capacity to actually be able to translate it to the local languages so that people understand. The other best place this is actually applied is in Botswana. But Botswana, we could speak to the ancestral courtesy of what they had grown from, where everything was consensual. They could be able to agree on everything. And these are since after that's why you've never had a protest in Botswana. A friend of mine from the country was telling me that, you know, as we are only 2 million, we can call one political rally in one stadium and we address everything and we go home. Everybody goes home happy. So if we are able to do that to the grassroots, and we saw even the former president Kama and Kama go to address the elders, sit down with them, go to their level. That is the kind of understanding which we need to have. We needed to cultivate in the new constitution. Once we have that, then everybody will have understood and they could be able to tell somebody that you are going against the spirit of our constitution. Right now, Kenyans cannot do that. They can only be told, you have a right to demonstrate. They are in the streets, they get arrested. The police have not since even been reformed. I liked one of the policemen, former policemen, who was speaking the truth to power and telling them, let's not lie to each other. What the challenge is the training of the police. We had something very important called the police reforms. Police reformed started but never
It was not
kicked
fully
off
implemented.
actually, and they were abandoned midway.
Correct.
If we can be able to do those two things, we will be a very nice country, as Trump likes putting it, a very nice country.
By a lot.
Yes, by a lot.
Let's take a break, gentlemen. I still want to take a break because when you come back, we saw arrests happening over the weekend, and I'm seeing a situation here. One Vihiga senator also is saying that he was targeted, but he was not arrested, as was reported over the media over the weekend. He was not arrested. He was speaking live in some place in Vihiga. So let's take a break. When we come back, I want us to talk about the issue of arrests and the charges. Whether it was politically instigated or the police did their homework pretty well. You know, some of these things will come and go, but the big one, the name of the former president is being dragged in this debate. Gentlemen, let's take a break. When we come back, that debate coming up shortly with Daniel and Wakili Gisore in studio. Stay with us. Welcome back. Stay with us, Daniel Orogo and Wakili Gibson in studio. So, gentlemen, a lot happened, but let me ask you this question. I'm still wondering why, based on what we have on the front page of the Star newspaper here, there you have it, why Ruto, Raila and Uhuru wore a risky game. Over to you, Daniel.
Well, I think, and you alluded to it, this cannot be discussed minus taking into account the events of what happened last weekend. I mean, you saw it was reported. Some channels reported it live, others recorded it later. The intrigues of what is happening between the former heads of state, the present heads of state, and the current Azimio leader is a tale to tell. As citizens, we receive from what is reported. But learning from other democracies, that is only where we can deduce our learning. Learning from other democracies. One, we are a constitutional democracy. Once people vote, there is a smooth transition of power that a former head of state hand over the power to the one that is elected. That was done in this country smoothly, and all over it was appreciated that, of course, Kenya has shown maturity in democracy. Like Wakili was mentioning, in some countries those things don't happen. Immediately after the election, people refuse to hand over power, and then there is chaos all over, and then the military comes in, and the whole country is thrown, constitution is suspended, and the military rules. But in our country, we really need to appreciate that the former heads of states and the former heads of states have been handing power peacefully. That we appreciate that the courts always pronounces themselves in each and every presidential election petition, and that political players have been abiding too. They might not be happy about it, but they always respect it. Now the current contemporary situation, and like exactly what I was alluding to, Victor, before we went to break. And I was saying this, if we have a constitution with a clear presidential term limits for first term and second term, a maximum of 10 years, you go home. Then it's the same constitution and the same acts that also prohibits a former head of state from openly pronouncing their political position in who they serve. And I would like Wakili probably to help us here, Victor, because I see that there is a little bit of contradiction in the law. Because here it is an act of a retirement benefits that tells that if you are a former government or prime minister, your term expires, take the package, relinquish your political open standing, go home, relax. On the other side, we have a constitution that gives a right of political participation. You understand? And that is where you see the former president on weekend saying that he has his own political right to support someone. He has his political right to be in a political party. Taking us where you're mentioning, we have a Jubilee party. This Jubilee party, that there is a leader of a Jubilee party, two factions of Jubilee party. In fact, somebody will ask you, if you are a member of Jubilee Party Wakili Gisore, you'll be asked, which camp are you? One political party, different factions. All right?
Yes.
So we have a party that is led by Sabina Chege, and we have, that is of course being pronounced by the Register of Political Parties and Political Parties Dispute Tribunal that gave power to one political Jubilee Party, right? With a leader, with a Secretary General, and an executive. Then we have another Jubilee Party that is led by the former head of state that have gone ahead to carry out the highest meeting of a governing party or a constitution of a Jubilee Party. The contradiction on power. Who is the leader of a Jubilee Party? Is it the one that has been given authority from the Register of Political Party, or is the one that went ahead and had a National Delegates Conference with the highest organ? So this is where we see ourselves, that now we have a former president who is active in politics, who is not relinquishing his political stand at all, who has a right to support a political leader constitutionally. That is risky.
That is risky
for a country.
What do you think, Wakili? That is risky for... of course, he'll say that he has a right, the way he said over the weekend that his political right is still intact. Wakili?
I think what I can only say to what Orogo said, that you cannot stop somebody from speaking because that right has been given by the Constitution. And this right of association cannot be tempered by an act which, of course, speaks to that is a former head of state. I think, as he was saying, he's speaking to the truth. That, I mean, we need, as we have given a comparison earlier, our constitution is quite advanced. We need to be able to appraise ourselves to that level. We have Trump, who is doing literally the same thing. Yeah, so we cannot be able to blame Uhuru Kenyatta for what he's doing. What we can only look at is the acts of government. What is government doing? What is, if there is something, Trump is now about to be charged in the US, so if there is anything government feels...
Some feelings and prospects of running for the next election.
Before a grand jury, and I think another one is in the offing. So if there is something which they feel that the former president is engaging in, which is unconstitutional, nothing stops them to produce him before a court of law. But this is also in Africa. We also need to take some lessons Orogo was trying to give us earlier. We have the same incident in South Africa. We saw what happened with between the current president and Zuma, the former. That has been very frosty. We go across to West Africa. We have Ivory Coast, where we have the former president and the current.